How quickly can your Mandarin Chinese language skills start to deteriorate if you stop actively working on your skills for a week, for a month, for a year, for a couple of years, maybe even for a decade or two? Someone who's been learning Mandarin for 9 years now, I don't have experience with what it might be like to stop studying Chinese for a decade or two, but I have been there have been periods of times where I've gone without studying the language for a year or 2 or 3 years, and I've gone without daily conversation in Chinese. I've gone without actively reading Chinese texts, and in my experience, what I've found is that for me personally, there is very little that doesn't stay with you once you return to an environment where you have to start using the language again every day. So my retention has been, my experience, very, very good. Now I will say, if you're not speaking a language fairly conversationally, fairly fluently, once you leave the language learning environment, you're not actively studying and things like that, or speaking with people daily, or speaking with people certainly weekly, then it's unlikely that you are going to be, if you're not speaking fluently to begin with, you're not going to come back and then think, oh well, I've had 2 or 3 years off, I'm just going to come back and I will start speaking the language because I've had time to consolidate it in my head, or whatever you mean. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. So you've got to, there's a truck coming here. I'm just going to pause it for the truck. Okay, that truck goes behind me. So if new words and new vocab, new phrases were not consolidated in your long-term memory or in your mind, and if you weren't speaking those fluently when you stopped actively speaking Mandarin, then obviously those words and phrases and certain facts and things are not going to be coming straight back to you once you resume your Mandarin language journey. So I think for the most part, I think you can be very confident that if you were to invest 6 or 12 months into learning to speak Mandarin, even if you were to take a year or 2 off after that fact, you could then very easily come back and you would resume right where you left off. I think there's very little deterioration there. Now, if you're not speaking Chinese after 6 to 12 months of studying Mandarin, then you're not going to be, you haven't really gained anything, in which case you haven't really had anything to lose. You weren't speaking Chinese to begin with, you take a couple of years off, you come back to it, and that's where you get that sort of old situational story of, oh, well, I've been studying Chinese for 10 years, but I still can't say anything. Well, you haven't been able to say anything to begin with anyway, so if you take a couple of years off and to come back for a year or 2, well, it doesn't really change anything. So I think do a little bit of intense work, learn to speak properly, consolidate that, and then even if you were to take a couple of months to a couple of years off, you would then come back into the field and you would learn very, very quickly. That would be my 2 cents. I'll end with this, and that's why it's so important that from day one you start speaking. From day one you start learning to speak not just specific words, not just a whole range of vocabulary, and you can identify different sounds and things, but actually attempting and going on to speak sentences as much as you can and making as many mistakes as you can from day one, because that's where the real growth is going to take place. And as I said, if you take a couple of months off, a couple of years off, you come back to it, you're able to pick up right where you left off. So start speaking from day one and you cannot go wrong.